Okay, let's jump right in. We're tackling something maybe a bit unexpected today. Anger. Specifically, anger in women as they navigate midlife.
Right. It's fascinating because you might assume, things get maybe more intense, more outward frustration.
Exactly. But this new study we're looking at, it kind of suggests the opposite, for many women at least.
It really does. But there's a twist, a certain kind of anger that doesn't follow that pattern. And, well, it ties into health in some surprising ways.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're talking about the evolving nature of anger, particularly during the menopause transition.
That's the core topic.
Yep.
And our main source is a fresh study just published in Menopause. That's the Journal of the Menopause Society.
And this comes from the Seattle Midlife Women's Health Study, right? Which has been running for ages.
Yeah, a long-term study, so it's got some solid grounding. Plus, there's decades of related research that backs up some of these connections.
So our mission here is to unpack all that the hormones, the emotional shifts, how they influence anger, the health links, basically trying to understand this often overlooked part of aging.
Exactly. And like you hinted, the big headline finding, let's just put it out there. The data seems to show that for a lot of women, the tendency towards, let's say, expressing anger, it actually drops quite sharply in midlife.
Sharply, okay.
But, and this is the really interesting, there's one key exception, is the anger we tend to, keep inside.
Okay, wow. So that first part, the drop in expressed anger, that really goes against the grain, doesn't it? Against common stereotypes.
It absolutely does.
What exactly did the researchers find? How did they measure this change?
Well, the study looked at different types of anger.
Yep.
Things like your basic anger temperament, just how prone you are to getting angry.
Okay.
Then there's anger reaction, how intense that feeling is when it hits.
Yeah.
And also anger expressed aggressively, the yelling, the outward stuff. And even hostility, which is a bit different, more like that simmering, distrustful feeling, always ready for a fight.
Gotcha.
And the consistent finding across these was, a significant decrease as women got older through midlife.
And it wasn't just about getting older chronologically, was it? It was tied to the menopause transition itself.
Precisely. The study linked these decreases specifically to the reproductive aging stages. So the drop happened after the late reproductive stage, moving through perimenopause and into postmenopause.
Huh. So what does that suggest? Why might that be happening?
Well, the underlying implication, and it's pretty profound, is that maybe better emotion regulation is actually happening during midlife.
Better regulation. Interesting.
Yeah, it challenges that whole midlife crisis and narrative in a way.
Yeah.
Maybe it's wisdom, maybe perspective, maybe just, reprioritizing things, a kind of emotional mastery developing.
Okay, so most kinds of anger might be quieting down. But you mentioned that crucial exception earlier, the anger we bottle up.
Ah, yes. That's the key nuance here. While all those other forms of anger showed a decline with age, suppressed anger did not. It wasn't related to age in the same way. It just kind of persists.
Suppressed anger, so the stuff you hold in.
Exactly. And the source makes a point to differentiate. Anger involves those antagonistic feelings, the intense reaction, maybe not much control over expression sometimes. Hostility is more fear-based, like being constantly on guard.
Right.
But this suppressed anger, the internal kind, that doesn't seem to lessen with age like the outward expressions do.
Okay, that definitely makes you think, especially about the known links between anger and, well, women's health. If that kind of anger isn't going away.
Absolutely. And that connection, it's not new. Research on anger in women's health, particularly cardiovascular stuff, goes way back to the 80s.
The 80s, really? Okay.
For example, one study showed women with what they called high trait anger, just generally being more anger prone. They saw increases in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure over just 3 years.
Wow, okay. So direct physical effects.
And it seems to go beyond just blood pressure spikes too, right?
Sure.
What about longer-term impacts?
Definitely. Later studies looked at things like carotid atherosclerosis, basically hardening of the arteries in the neck.
Okay.
And they found that women who scored higher on anger scales were more likely to develop thicker arterial walls, this thing called intima media thickness.
Which is like a warning sign.
It's like buildup, yeah,
Okay.
a sign of cardiovascular risk. And this was found like a decade later. So real long-term consequences.
A decade. That's significant. And it's not just physical health, is it? What about mental health links?
That's a crucial piece, too. The research suggests women who struggle frequently with anger are also more likely to face severe depressive symptoms during menopause.
Oh.
Especially, it seems, if they're also undergoing hormone therapy. It adds another layer of complexity.
So you've got these health links, you've got suppressed anger sticking around.
Hmm.
How does this all connect back to the hormonal roller coaster of midlife? Well, it's pretty well recognized, actually. Dr. Monica Christmas, who's involved with the Menopause Society, points this out.
Okay.
She highlights that hormone fluctuations, you see them postpartum, you see them monthly with menstrual cycles, and crucially, during perimenopause, these shifts can absolutely trigger severe mood swings, and that includes anger and hostility.
Right. Makes sense.
And she makes a really important point. The mental health side of the menopause transition, it often goes unacknowledged, unmanaged.
That seems like a huge gap if it's not acknowledged or managed.
It could have a massive effect on just, overall quality of life, on health.
So what's the takeaway there? What needs to change?
It really comes down to education and active management, making sure women know that mood changes, including anger, are possible during these times.
Right. So it's not just them. It's a physiological thing.
Exactly. And then helping them find ways to manage it, coping strategies, support systems, maybe discussing treatment options like hormone therapy if appropriate. It's about being proactive.
Taking a whole person approach, really.
Precisely. Holistic and proactive wellness for midlife.
So thinking ahead then, based on this study, what are the next steps? What more do we need to understand?
Well, the study itself calls for more research, specifically looking at women's anger in their sort of everyday lives, not just in a lab setting.
Okay, real world context.
Yeah. The goal is to get a clearer picture so we can actually develop better, more effective strategies for emotion regulation and anger management.
To really tailor the support.
Exactly. And to understand the actual consequences, long-term, for midlife and older women. We need that deeper understanding.
This has been really, really insightful. So just to recap the big points, we learned that, surprisingly, many forms of expressed anger tend to decrease as women move through midlife.
Right, which might point towards, better emotional regulation, maybe some wisdom gained.
And it's a big but suppressed anger, the kind we hold in that seems to stick around.
Yeah, it doesn't follow the same downward trend. And it carries these significant health implications we talked about, closely tied to hormonal shifts.
So what's the final thought here? If outward anger goes down but inward anger persists, what does that really tell us?
Well, I think it highlights something critical, doesn't it?
Mm.
That maybe true emotional well-being in midlife isn't just about stopping ourselves from yelling. It's perhaps more about the deeper work, learning how to actually address, process, and maybe release that anger we're holding on to.
So the internal work becomes even more important.
It seems paramount. It affects not just our peace of mind, but our physical health, potentially for years to come. This deep dive really underscores that understanding our emotions, especially during big physiological shifts like menopause, isn't just soft stuff. It's fundamentally linked to our vitality.